As you know, I only review the best movies. If I review a movie, you should watch it. End of story. Today we're going to be talking about the 2013 sci-fi action film directed by Bong Joon-Ho called Snowpiercer. Now, I don't have to tell you that part of Hollywood's job is to manipulate the unwashed masses, to brainwash the peasants. So when a movie like this slips through the cracks, you can imagine why Harvey Weinstein was singled out as the only Hollywood money man punished for his huge sex appetite. Okay, so this movie had a $40 million budget. It's the most expensive Korean production ever. It starts off telling you that because of global warming, we got to spray CW7 in the air. Yes, that's what they're going to do. They're going to spray some who knows what type of chemicals, and nobody, you can no longer ignore global warming. Does it sound like what we hear today from all the snowflakes and all the hipsters, all the people trying to get your money? They're trying to take your money to spray stuff in the air. Well, I mean, it's happening today. And now you know why Harvey Weinstein was picked out. He was the money man who made this movie possible. So they tell you that they're going to spray this chemicals into the upper layers of the atmosphere. And, remember, this movie is a metaphor of politics today. It's a sci-fi action film, but the moral of the story today is simple. You need to read between the lines. You need to use your imagination and read the writing on the wall, cryptic as it may be. It's based on a French story. You see that name there? Lay, whatever. So the first scene, you see chemtrails. Okay? Hell, it'd be funny if it wasn't so sad. I mean, we're talking about the unintended consequences of the actions of morons and idiots spraying chemtrails in our skies. I mean, how sad is it? Now, I mean, Harvey Weinstein, you knew better than this. To leave this scene in the movie, shame on you. The cabal is not pleased with you. I mean, did you ever wonder why? That out of all the pervert producers in Hollywood, and trust me, there are a lot of them, quite possibly 95% of all the money men in Hollywood are perverts. I mean, shit, that's the only reason why they invest their money in movies, for the easy poontang. But again, out of all the money men, perverts in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein was the only one taken down in the Me Too sex scandal. Harvey, the only money man, strange, wouldn't you say, out of thousands of these guys over the years. Shit, you might come to the conclusion that all these money men are protected, but not Harvey. Okay, so in one of the first scenes in the movie, right out of the gate, we see the chemtrails. The director is leading us to believe that chemtrails changed the environment, made it colder. And I mean, now we know that part of Hollywood's job is to manipulate through thought patterns, manipulate us, brainwash. So do you think the deep state was happy about Hollywood promoting a movie that exposes the dangers of chemtrails? I mean, think about it. Now, the whole movie is one gem after another in exposing how the world is run by a secret cabal, manipulating the unwashed masses. I mean, in this metaphor, the unwashed masses, they live in the tail section of the train. I mean, we're talking about this movie is a microcosm of the deep state that we are experiencing today. That's why this movie is so important. It is a metaphor of what we have been experiencing for thousands of years, and we are still experiencing it today. But enough of current events. Let's get back to the movie. Of course, the chemtrails destroyed the environment. It got real cold. No life was able to survive. except for the people who got on this train. It's a self-running, eternal engine train. Of course, there's, a genius billionaire who saw this all coming. He's played by Ed Harris. Ed Harris is Wilford, the creator of the train. And I think a lot of people paid to get on the train, but the people in the back, the peasants in the back, I'm not sure they paid to get on the train. So you're going to see similarities with, the rich billionaires or the rich elite are in the front of the train, and the peasants are in the back of the train. At this point in the movie, we see the main character, who is Chris Evans. He's standing up there. Chris Evans is Curtis. And his character is the reluctant hero, an ordinary man thrown into extraordinary circumstances which require him to rise to the occasion. Here you have John Hurt. He plays the elder statesman. John Hurt is their leader, but he's getting old. And John, of course, is trying to convince Chris Evans here, which is Curtis, that he's going to be the leader. But Curtis is reluctant to be the leader, but he really has no choice because, as you see, John Hurt says, I'm a shadow of my former shadow. I mean, these guys are in bad shape back there. They're like homeless in the back of the train. They're peasants. And then comes one of the kiss-ass characters. She's quite a character. She works for the boss, Ed Harris. And so she's given a 7-minute speech. If you screw up in the back, if you're one of the peasants and you screw up, they put your arm outside and your arm freezes and it falls off. It's really sick, but you must remain in your allotted station. And like our culture today, our society today, you must occupy your preordained particular position. I mean, think like the Donald Trump. Donald Trump's dad was rich, so he gave Donald Trump $1 million. Donald Trump remained rich no matter how many bankruptcies he's went in, and he gives $1 million to his daughter, Ivanka. And, there's similarities in our society today. And also you have, if you remember when Donald Trump gave his speech to the Boy Scouts, Donald Trump was very clear to the Boy Scouts, you guys are the workers, okay? To Donald Trump, to the billionaires, to the elite, to the rich, we are just workers to serve the billionaires. See, the billionaires own everything. The billionaires own what, like 90% of everything? And we are nothing but peasants in today's society. We are nothing but slaves. And if it gets real bad, then you're actually homeless, living in a homeless camp. So it's really scary how the similarities between this movie and society today. The metaphors are really, really spot on. I mean, think about what's the guy say there in the beginning of the movie? He says, those bastards in the front section think they own us. I mean, what do you think the poor people in America and poor people all over the world, what do they think today? They think that the billionaires are arrogant. The politicians are full of themselves, full of hubris, okay? Now here's the second, I didn't talk about this. He says, we control the engine, we control the world. He wants to control the engine. Now this is a metaphor for the Federal Reserve banking cartel. Remember how the billionaires rule today. The billionaires and the elite control us because they're in control of printing the fake money. They're in control of the Federal Reserve banking cartel. That's why they get all the money. They own everything. And we're living under the bridges. We're struggling paycheck to paycheck because we don't really have a connection to the Federal Reserve banking cartel. Basically, they can counterfeit money and we have to pick up the breadcrumbs. So it's pretty clear here that the politicians, the deep state, and the billionaires, they're not happy with this metaphor here. I mean, if the peasants were ever to figure out that the secret is the Federal Reserve banking cartel, and they can push a button, that's how they get billions, and that's how we starve to death. I mean, if the peasants ever figure that out, it would be like in this movie, Curtis is going to try to take the engine, train. I mean, by now, I hope you see why Harvey had to be punished. Yeah. Harvey, shame on you, Harvey. Well, I'm not going to tell you the end of the movie. I don't want to spoil it for you, but just like from the beginning of human history. Beginning of time, there is war. The war is to thin the herd, so there will always be plentiful food and resources for the rich elite, the billionaires. In this film, the elite in the front live the good life. Just like Donald Trump and his children. His children will never go to war. Only the peasants' children will go to war. And you think it's a coincidence that the soldiers who went to Vietnam got hooked on drugs? You think it's a coincidence that your children who go to public schools are initiated with drugs? Well, in this movie, they call it chrono. They need this guy here to get him to the front. He's the guy who can open the doors. And chrono is what they hallucinate with. You can think of think of cocaine, meth, crack. The metaphor for this is chrono head, aka meth head. And of course, the peasants have to eat something. And they call this the protein blocks. Think of Soylent Green, or better yet, think of Soylent Cockroach Amber. Yeah, it's like an amber color. And that's what it's made out of. So this has got everything. It's got the war, the drugs, the Mickey D's, and whatever's in that horse meat hamburger they call it. Mickey D's. You got the criminal politicians who sell their souls to the cabal, who own the Federal Reserve fake money presses. You thin the herd with this World Bank bitch. And then, they even got it figured out how many of the peasants are going to die. Precisely 74% of you shall die. We will thin the herd because we don't have the resources to feed you people. It gets really bad. And of course, they're living in luxury. The elite in the front, which we will find out pretty soon. But then come the pitchforks. And the metaphor in this movie is the light. They go through a dark tunnel during the war. In the war, they're having a combat session, and they cannot see, so bring the light out, but actually it's the pitchforks. That is, if we are going to keep in our analysis of the similarities between the battle between the rich and the poor in human history. The rich know that they have to cause chaos to keep the peasants from getting bored. Chaos is all part of it. For example, Donald Trump's Secretary of State, Pompeo, he just said recently, if we melted the sea ice, if we melt the ice in the ocean, it would create opportunities for trade. These people are idiots and morons, but they know. We cannot keep the unwashed masses. We cannot let them get bored. We have to keep chaos and war. And this is what it looks like in the movie. This is what the outside world looks like. Remember, this train, this is a sci-fi movie. And yes, the train is going around the world and there's ice everywhere. Some of it's, that might not seem realistic to you, but this is a sci-fi movie. This is a metaphor of the battle between the rich and the poor throughout humankind. And here we get to see how the rich are living up in the front. They got their own aquarium with the fish, and they have the best slabs of meat. They even have a sushi bar. Look at this. They're living large up front, and these people can't believe it. They've been eating, what do we call it there? The Soylent Cockroach Amber mess. And then, of course, the most important part of the movie, because this is what Americans don't even get yet, the public school brainwashing. It is the beauty of it. Here we have the children being brainwashed and manipulated perfectly. Who's in charge? Wilford's in charge. Wilford built this eternal train, and we are so grateful for Wilford. But Wilford behind the scene is working with the leader in the back to cause chaos, war, drugs, and it's just uncanny. The similarities of the fake matrix that we live in today, everything's a lie. Then we even have the fancy nightclub and the bars where the elites, if we actually knew how much the elites paid for their wine and their hookers, if we knew how they ate and their yachts, we would be flabbergasted. And it's really shown here, and this movie really shows it, how these people are living up front and the peasants are living in the back. And of course, to keep this fake matrix going, I mean, you're going to need the CIA, aren't you? I mean, to keep the system safe from dissenters, you need the CIA, the NSA, the KGB, the Mossad. You need the enforcers, and here you got them. Then you got, of course, not only do you have to keep the peasants from getting bored, you have to keep the people at the top from getting bored. So then you have the nightclubs and the drugs and the orgies, and it's all to prevent the population from getting bored, because boredom is a fatal disease. We've got everything in this movie. This movie is a template to understand the modern deep state and how they keep us down with war and drugs. And war and drugs would not be possible without the public schools initiations. And then you got the bean counters, all the bureaucrats who work in places like Homeland Security, the lobbyists who work for the bankers, and they write the laws that we have to obey. But believe me, the laws are for them. I mean, this is not a pretty picture, and no, it isn't. It ain't pretty, but it is a great movie. It's a fine movie, and I give it 8.5 out of 10 Bravos. You got to watch this one.